Hi, thank you, Sal. It's really lovely to be coming off of the back of Sal's presentation, because he spoke to so much of what Daybreak is also really interested in and passionate about. So I'm really, really happy to be here. My name's Claire. I'm the Director of Services for Daybreak, a charity that's been around for 25 years and has been working in the family group conference space and restorative practice space for all those years. And so the Families First partnership reforms were just music to our ears, and we're really, really passionate about the change that this can bring and how that this can really empower families and about working with families. So we really do want to be part of that movement where we can build communities where families are working together and social networks are working together. So we in Daybreak have various different contracts with local authorities to deliver family group conferences. We also deliver lifelong links as well, funded by the DFE. And we also have a grant-funded project that we are kind of trialling family network meetings, which I know I've been asked today to kind of really explore, so I will get there. And also we do take, for example, spot purchases. And I just want to say, I think that's really important because there is now also a real movement for FGCs in the adult sector, and particularly if we think about transitional safeguarding, something I'm really passionate about those young people that are moving from children's social care into adults. I think that's sometimes a lost space, and it's a space that we do really need to think about the value of FGCs. And then we also, because we do have really experienced family group conference and relational restorative practitioners, we have been building our training and consultancy arm. But just to say, we really do see ourselves as part of the FGC community. So we've been putting on like some free lunch and learn webinars, and we're always happy to kind of engage with our local authority friends and have kind of mutual brain picking. So we don't sit behind that training consultancy arm. So obviously we're all here because of the reforms, the Family First Partnership, and this is a real opportunity for us all to put family group decision making at the centre. And you'll notice the term family group decision making because there was a decision to be model agnostic. However, I think that we in Daybreak, which we'll get into a bit more, really want to acknowledge that family group conferences are the only evidence-based model in that space currently. However, there is family network meetings. I think with the reforms, I think what we in Daybreak have been thinking about is, like with the earlier speaker, how important it is to think about this from a systems change piece. That this isn't a case of putting through huge amounts of practitioners through FGC or F&M training and then hoping that they're just going to be relational and restorative. We've seen that happen in other agendas, and then there's practice drift or poor practice. This is about thinking about the systems piece, about how do you embed culture change so that all of our practitioners working with families hold true to the values and principles of family group decision making. And we're really excited that now is our opportunity to think about it across the children's social care landscape, because historically FGCs have really sat at pre-proceedings in the court arena, and if you've been lucky, at CP. And really, where the change really needs to happen is family group decision making needs to be offered earlier on so that families can be re-empowered, because often they've lost a sense of self-agency. We're not gifting them being empowered. They need to be re-empowered to face their challenges, to prevent escalation, because they don't want to end up at PLO. So that's something that we feel these reforms really give us an opportunity to do. However, we think that there are some considerations with these reforms. So, for example, where family group decision making is being a mandated offer from the 1st of April at PLO and above, we think that there really does need to be work given to the consideration of how do we ensure that our practitioners are working with families in a way where they're working relationally to get informed consent and voluntary participation, and that families don't feel compelled to do this. And I think that's something that's really, really key. And that speaks to what Sal was saying earlier about time frames. So we're not process driven, because if a family is being told, oh, you should really do an FGC and you've got 2 weeks to do it, how is that true to the values and principles of it being family-led, of really being able to map their family, even do cultural mapping, and make sure that that family-led approach is really embedded in a family-first approach. We also recognise the safeguarding context, and this is where myself, I come from a kind of a systemic family therapy background, and I think that we as a workforce need to be more comfortable with safe uncertainty, so that Mason kind of quadrant model, and I think it speaks to some of what Sal was saying earlier, that we're not funneling people through a process. So if we want our families to experience family group decision making, then we also need to do work with our workforce around how do you sit with safe uncertainty through the family group decision-making process, because otherwise, actually, if you can't sit with that, it squashes the FGC process. And I've seen it happen where the family-led part starts bleeding out because we start jamming it into a process. Obviously, we do need to manage risk, though. But we feel that the space for more innovation is earlier on for families. Okay. So there is lots of benefits to this opportunity we've got. It is for families to be re-empowered. It's for families to engage with a caring and relational practitioners and workforce that want to facilitate opening up a space for families that's about empowering them to think through their problems and solution find. And I think that's key. We need to move away from doing two and move into a space of thinking of ourselves as facilitators of possibility thinking and facilitators of solution finding. But it is the families to find those solutions. And also about drawing upon our networks. And so many of our families that we work with, everyone's network looks different. So my network, for example, might look small on the face of it, just with my parents, but I've got my best friend down the road and I've got the church around the corner that since I've had my little one, I've really become part of that community. So if they were mapping my family, I don't have a lot of biological family, and the ones that I do have are all over the place. And so for me, it would be really important to think about my social network, not only my family network. So we need to start to think more in that realm. I think there's real benefits for children's social care around prevention of moving up into care proceedings, because that's not what any of us get into working with families to do. Obviously, we want to try and look for kind of cost avoidance. I think that's the new term now, not cost effectiveness. But really, it's because we don't want families to be going up the ladder that Sal so expertly showed us. We want to be working with them earlier. And then the bit that I think I'm really passionate about, so I also have kind of a workforce development background, is I really see where a family group conference service doesn't sit as a silo and it sits as an embedded part of children's social care, you really start to see this kind of really positive bleeding out effect where the referrers or the other professionals that maybe contribute at the beginning of an FGC start to become passionate about relational and restorative work because they see how much more engaged the family is. They see the better outcomes for children. So these family first reforms give us an opportunity to actually affect change across our workforce to make sure that we are more relational and restorative in our practice with families. So Daybreak, as I said, is really excited with these reforms because we want to work in fostering safety and stability and long-term well-being for children and young people and adults. And I think that's the other key bit is when we work with families, yes, we are working with them through, say, children's social care, but I'm just as invested in thinking about that parent, for example, that mum who sadly has been diagnosed with MS. And I want to work with her just as much as I want to work with the children, because I know that that makes a difference to the family. And I think that's really key within family group decision making. So in Daybreak, we've been doing some thinking, and we've been engaging in conversations with various different kind of local authorities around their kind of family group conference services. And I know that there is discussions, and it's exciting to think about family group decision-making models, which I will be getting onto. So as I said, we've only got one evidence-based model, but there is a thing called family network meetings that's out there, but family network meetings mean different things to different people, and you'll go one end of the country and you'll see a different model to the other end of the country. So Daybreak is excited to have the opportunity to innovate in the family network meeting model. However, we are also concerned, and I think we hold that duality of thinking, how do we innovate, but how do we hold true to the values and principles of family group decision making, and family network meetings don't become a vehicle for, I think, practice that doesn't sit true to those values. So I think that's a real area of development. And then the shared values and culture change. So our great colleagues from Lancashire, Michelle and Jeanette, will be talking more about the values. But in Daybreak, we looked at them and we feel that the values of it being voluntary-led, the values of the facilitator, so for family network meetings, we're calling them facilitators, of them being neutral and impartial. So with FGCs, you have independent. F&Ms, we still feel that neutral and impartial matters. But there's ways to do that. So, for example, we also recognise, and I think Leeds, nudge, nudge, would be one of the places where there's really great practice, is that some families want relational continuity. And some families have built up really great relationships, for example, with their early help practitioners. And so their early help practitioner would be the person that they would want to do a family network meeting with. But that means that that early help practitioner is really going to need training and supervision to be able to step into the family network meeting process and wear a neutral hat and not go into assessment, not go into advice. And so the values of family group decision making that really come from FGCs still completely apply to F&M. It's just that how do you flex and do that with integrity? And that's where I think the culture change piece comes from. And so leading into kind of workforce planning, I think there's a lot of debate going on, and some local authorities, for example, that already have FGC services, are expanding their FGC service, and then they're staying just with FGCs. Some local authorities, for example, are keeping FGCs at that top end, the mandated end, and then they're looking for where's the innovation around family network meetings, for example, early help practitioners, or as we call them, kind of differently qualified practitioners, social workers working more at SIN, or I think that term will be going soon, and they are looking to train them in family network meetings, which we're really excited in, and we can still see real value in. But what we also see value in is that if a local authority still has their FGC service, it means that with that FGC service comes a wealth of knowledge and experience and integrity to the values and boundaries, and they can give that supervision and support to the people delivering the family network meetings. It is an area of concern for me if, for example, local authorities put all of their workforce through family network meeting training and they don't have some specialism, then I do have concerns about practice drift. I do have concerns about where are those practitioners getting quality supervision that's specific to family group decision making to ensure that the model is being delivered ethically. And then skills and practice. We in Daybreak have been having lots of conversations, and we really feel that you have FGC training, you have family network meeting training, and it's just the start, because there's a lot of other skills and knowledge that needs to go with that, such as trauma-informed practice. It's really key when you're working with families who have been through really tough times to be able to work with them sensitively through the model. Also relational and restorative practice, conflict management. And the other area that's really key, and lots of people use different terms, anti-racist practice, cultural intelligence, what I said about safe uncertainty, that workforce need to be able to work from a place of safe uncertainty. They need to be able to work from a place, for example, with my background, I tend to lean into Burnham's social graces, but I don't just hold it as a theory. It's actually a relational tool that I use reflexively. And that takes more training and more support and coaching, and is quite key. I think even more so if you're going to work in the kind of wider workforce family network meeting space. So if we speak to this, I'm going to work from the family network meeting and then go backwards, kind of a little bit being cheeky and assuming that people know what FGCs are. So with family network meetings, again, I just want to be really transparent. We've been trialling and modelling this, and the way that we do it might be slightly different to the way that others do it. And we are also being commissioned to train other kind of local authorities in this. And because the way that we train is to have a dialogue and a conversation with those local authorities, things may get tweaked a bit depending on how they intend to utilise it. But essentially, if we look at family group conferences and family network meetings, we do feel that family network meetings sit better at the early help through to what would now be currently child in need and lower end of child protection. And we feel that it is a family-led decision, and the gold standard would be that they could be offered in FGC or a family network meeting, and it's their decision. The gold standard would be it's their decision whether they stick with relational continuity and have someone deliver that F&M that they know, or whether they say, no, actually, I really do want someone who's neutral and impartial. And then you might have an FGC coordinator who's also trained in family network meetings who can step in and deliver that. The reason why we say can be a smaller network is that if we're really working from a family-led place, we may do the most fabulous genogram, but those parents at the centre go, but actually the people that are really going to affect change and I can work with that are going to be around are these people. So these are the people I need there. I don't need my auntie from Scotland, and I don't really need her opinion. These are the people that matter to me. We do still believe in the kind of face-to-face relational work, particularly, so there is still a preparation stage, but that preparation stage is somewhat defined by who the family feel are important to them. The other key area with family network meetings as we're delivering them is that we are not driven by referrer questions. And so I often look at FGCs and some of the referrer questions we get in at the FGC level, and I think, how is a family going to find their own solutions and come up with their own plan? You've just written it there because you've given me 10 closed questions and you've basically just asked them to agree. So actually, I will then work with a referrer around having 3 or 4 open questions. But at the F&M level, I think it's much more family-led if we can work at what are the family's challenges? And then we go and have a conversation with that family and we say, what do you think your challenges are? What is it that you want to work through, rather than being led by referrers' questions? But we do need to come to a consensus on what those challenges are and what the family want to work through. Another area that I think is really key, and in family network meetings we're really keen to do, is thinking about that wider network of support. So you might have an IDVA, from the DAV world, who it would be really helpful to connect the family with and to think about what information they can provide. But it may be that the family, in particular, to safeguard the family network meeting from becoming another multi-agency meeting, where the family say, well, could you present that information to me? And then I'll go away and have a think about that. And then when it comes to private family time, again, we're completely led by the family. So we do family network meetings, or we do an FGC that actually becomes a family network meeting, because the family say, for example, I really want you to stay in the room, and it speaks to the psychological safety. And so we had one recently where Hannah, brilliant FGC coordinator, F&M coordinator, was sat on her laptop, And what the family were able to do is the family were able to say, look, could you just come back in and could you just kind of remind us of, and it was the rules for success. So it's where she'd done in the prep stage a bit of coaching around how do you communicate respectfully, I statements, showing empathy, not talking over each other. And then in another family network meeting, what she did is the family were saying, look, we really need someone to help us by asking us questions. And so the training that I've been doing with Hannah and some of our other staff is really to train them in bringing from brief solution-focused questioning, appreciative inquiry, motivational interviewing. So I'm not saying you have to be trained in all of that, but you can take nuggets of gold from that and you can be in the room if the family want you to, so that you can ask them questions to open up possibility thinking and finding of solutions. But particularly in Hannah's practice, she never wants to convene that private family time. She's not staying there constantly. She might ask some of those questions to get them thinking, and then she kind of wanders off again. And that's all led by the family. And I think that's one of the key differences with the family network meeting model. But it also means there's some additional skills that the workforce really needs to develop. The reviewing of the plan, which is integral to FGCs. So one of the things that I'm so passionate about is, and I will halt and say an FGC did not happen if the referrer does not attend the FGC and is not there to review the plan. I will say it didn't happen, I might charge you for that one, and you're going to have to re-refer again, because the family did not get a fair process. How can that be a fair process if the family didn't hear your feedback, didn't have a chance to see if they want to adjust their plan? It's not appropriate to tell them 2 weeks later, no, you didn't meet the safeguarding requirements. But at an F&M level, with one particular local authority we've been working with, who's a very experienced FGC manager, it's about that at the end, the family have their plan, and rather it's that we've been really transparent with them at the start, that if they are in agreement, the plan that they come up with from the family network meeting will then be shared at the team around the family meeting later. So there's full transparency that it will be looked at, but they don't feel like they're under scrutiny or review. And also, because you're keeping that separate, the family network meeting and the TAF or the TAC separate, you're not then turning the family network meeting into a multi-professional meeting, which we really need to avoid. So there, as you can see, I think with family network meetings, there's more flex, but with that flex comes a real extra responsibility and specialism to be able to hold to the integrity of it being family-led, of there being the neutrality and impartiality, of it thinking about who does the family want there. And I think the other key bit is that it centres on what are the family's challenges and what are their concerns, rather than the safeguarding red lines. So that's why I'm more comfortable with FGCs at CP, PLO and court arena, and I'm more comfortable with family network meetings in what will soon be the new approach with family-led practitioners and child protection practitioners. And these are the kind of family group decision-making principles that we've looked at again in Daybreak, and we think these equally apply to family network meetings, that it's voluntary, that it's family-led, and we think family network meetings lean even more into it being family-led, because they can make some choices along the way. That the referred child or adult is always at the centre. So gaining the child's voice is just as key in that preparation stage for a family network meeting as it is for an FGC. The neutrality is really important. And again, the equality, inclusion and diversity. So really considering what will make this family network meeting meaningful to a family? Where is it? What is the food? For example, if there is differences based on respect for elders, how do we incorporate that whilst also not disenfranchising, say, a younger member of the family? So really holding everyone's needs in mind. I'm just going to let Jeanette and Michelle take over in a minute. So I'm more than happy today to take any further questions you want around kind of family network meetings and FGCs. And also just to say I did share probably about 50 slides originally, and we are more than happy for that to get sent out to everyone. And it's got more of our thinking, particularly around the workforce, the skills, and the shared values and culture change. So you're very welcome to receive that. And also at Daybreak, please do get in touch via our head office if you want to continue the conversation with us. Okay, great.